Hello everyone, welcome to Voice Essentials Live. It is so good to have you joining us here on what is my Monday, 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, but of course so many of you are watching this live in so many other parts of the world, all over the globe. So many of you are still in your, well, we celebrate a thing called Father's Day in the first Sunday of every September, is it? Is that correct? Anyway, so we had Father's Day for my yesterday, and you may still be celebrating your Father's Day today. If you are and you're a father, happy Father's Day. I hope you've had a great day and you got a few prezzies. Maybe you were given some socks and some chockies. I was given a lawnmower to mow the lawn. It's an electric, not electric, it's a battery-powered lawnmower, which I'm very excited to take receipt of. So anyway, I hope you've had a great day. We do this every Monday at 1 p.m. Many of you are watching this show as a replay. We love having you join us, not live because some of you are asleep right now live, but we love having you watch the show. And so we hope you enjoy the next 50 minutes or so, because today we've got such a great guest. She's a friend, not only a friend of the show, a friend of Voice Essentials, but a personal friend and colleague, Dr. Shannon Coates. She's going to be joining us in just a moment, and I'm really looking forward to today's discussion. I think today's discussion might get a little cheeky, so I think you want to kind of hang around, because this is going to give you perhaps some insights into the world of singing teaching. Now you might think, well, that's a little bit boring. Actually, I think there's some really important things to learn about the voice teaching world that will inform your learning if you're not a singing teacher per se, but you're a learner, an adult learner of singing. I think today's discussion will be really informative and give you some insights into, why does my singing teacher do that? Like, what's behind that? There are often, or there should be, good reasons for everything that your singing teacher does. But before we do, I just want to let you know a couple of things. Little secret, I am about to sign off on developing a brand new website. Very exciting, very nerve-wracking, because the current website, the Djarts website, D-J-A-R-T-S, it's about 7 years old. It's still a good website, but I feel like I've outgrown it. And so we are going to, it's a bit like, you know, those crabs that live in a little shell, and they've got to hop out of that little house and go looking for a new house that they can get bigger in. That's kind of what I feel like I need to do, which makes me feel a little bit vulnerable and what have you, but vulnerability is a good thing for growth, so that's what we're going to do over the next few months. I will keep you tracking on how that's all going. Of course, Voice Essentials 3. To date, I have not given you a date for launch of Voice Essentials 3. Are you ready? December 1. That is when Voice Essentials 3 will be launching. All things being equal, we are in the age of COVID, so maybe I should put like an asterisk on that. But all things being equal, December 1, that's when we're going to launch. I'm hoping that we'll be launching the new website at the same time. Stay tuned, very exciting, lots of work for me to do. You don't have to worry about that bit. I'll take care of that bit, and I'll keep you all informed. Next week, we're doing a Q&A, so make sure that if you do have questions from today's session, or you just want your general questions answered, that you let me know, let Linda know in the live chat section, and Linda's going to take your questions, and we may get to those next week. I do want to I saw Mackenzie Kate. Mackenzie Kate left us a question in our last week's Q&A, and Mackenzie Kate asked, I'm just going to bring it up, asked about POTS. Now, POTS stands for Postural Orthostatic Tachycardia Syndrome. I had never heard of it, I have to admit. And I'm, like I say all the time here on the channel, I am always letting people know. If I don't know something, I'll tell you. I had not heard of that. Can I tell you, I went to my books and I have got some of the best texts in the world for voice rehabilitation, voice science, sitting on my shelf. I've got a massive library. I couldn't find it. I could not. We might ask Dr. Shannon in a moment to see if she's ever heard of it. I just saw her response. You can't see her on screen right now, but she's going, I don't think she may not have heard of it either. So Mackenzie, I just wanted to let you know I did go looking and I can't find any information on it. And so you will want to go back to your neurologist and ask them about it, and perhaps your laryngologist. Hopefully they can give you some further insight into that. But it was such an interesting question. I went, oh, never heard of POTS before. And I couldn't find anything on that topic. Finally, as we get into our introducing our guest, I've had a couple of comments over the last few guests that we've had on, and occasionally there's been some comments saying, oh, Dr. Dan looks really disinterested while the guest is on. I can assure you I am not disinterested. What I'm doing, I just want you all to know this, I'm having to call the shots. I'm having to switch screens, and as you know, besides Linda, who takes down our questions and moderates our live chat and keeps that all safe and healthy, I'm kind of doing everything at my end. So if you ever see me looking off screen, I'm not watching the ball game. I'm actually doing something for the show, right? So if it ever looks like I'm looking a little bit concentrated elsewhere, trust me, I'm still with us all. Okay. I did. Oh dear. I think if that's anything to go on and what the rest of the show is going to be, I think we'll have a lot of fun. I hope you'll stick around because Dr. Shannon Coates is really well worth your time. We'll be back in a moment.
Sound check. Check 1, check 2.
I promise I will not be disinterested in you. Hello, Shannon. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. That was a very funny intro and hard for me to stay silent while I was listening to it.
I could see it. Well, we've just had a few comments, and poor Linda in our live chat, she's constantly telling people, no, he's not disinterested. He's okay. He's on. Oh dear. Okay. Let's kick off by asking you, because we'll do a brief intro for those who have not met you before, because you've been on the show in fact, this is the second time this year.
Yes, this might be the second time this year.
I think the last time we had you on was pre-COVID.
I think so.
Anywho, have you ever heard of POTS?
So, I think I have.
Yeah.
But not in a wow, I could speak to this intelligently way.
Yeah.
And I think someone that you may.
Yeah, go. Yeah? No, I was just going to say it's. So what it is it's when you get dizzy from standing up. It's a drop in blood pressure.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So not in a way that I could speak really intelligently to it, though.
Yeah.
That's the thing, especially not in relationship to singing.
To voice, but
and to voice. But someone who may be a good resource for that would be Kate Fraser-Neely. So that might be someone, C-A-T-E.
Yeah, Kate's been on the show before, so
yes, she may be a good resource.
Okay, interesting.
For that.
Yeah. It's when I start to think about a drop in blood pressure, I start to think about the body of the vocal fold, the vocalis muscle, and its ability to maintain mass. I don't know. But again, I'm like you. I can't speak to it with any level of intelligibility at all. So, Dr. Shannon Coates, well, tell us very, very briefly, because you've been on the show many times before, but we do have some new people that join us now. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to talk about Formant-Free pedagogy. And we'll explain what that is in a moment. Let us know, who is this wonderful woman in Canada?
Yes, well, there's the thing. I am in Canada, from Canada, and so yay for the Commonwealth. And I am currently in the northern part of Ontario. So if you know where Toronto is, I'm about 7 hours north of Toronto. And there's another 12 to 14 hours to left in the province if you want to keep going north. Just FYI, it's a big place. And so the Wi-Fi here is a little sketch because there is no fiber optics. So we've got as good as you can get up here, but just so you know, things may get a little draggy, little laggy. But
well, I went to say so far so good, and then Zoom just shrunk your page. So anyway, we're going to continue as long as we can hear you.
Oh, because
it's the most important bit.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay.
And so I am good to go?
Yeah, good to go.
Good to go.
Yep.
I am primarily now I work primarily with voice teachers. I develop resources, classes, courses for voice teachers specifically, not only to help in terms of anatomy and physiology and understanding that kind of that part of the voice a little bit better, and also singers who want to understand the anatomy and physiology of the voice a little bit better. But also working on the sort of teaching side of things, the actual pedagogy side of things, the voice pedagogy. So how to become better teachers and how to encourage deeper learning in our students and all that kind of thing. So that is, as we were speaking about earlier, that was a transition that I was actually making from a full sort of traditional independent studio kind of model, where I was teaching, everyone from like 6-year-olds to 80-year-olds and above, and teaching in lots of different styles and working with lots of different kinds of singers, which I love, but sort of made that transition and decided to make that transition around the new year. And hey, what do you know? COVID really kicked that transition right into gear. So here we are.
Here you are. It's yes, COVID has presented us with a whole range of changes in circumstances, but you were mentioning that it's actually not been a bad thing in some respects for you, because it's I guess changed people's approach to being able to join you, and in a funny kind of way, whilst it's caused us to all retreat within the borders of our own nations, hasn't it? It really actually, on one level, certainly for teaching, it's really opened up the borders, because people are so more prepared, I guess, to participate with things online.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
That has been my experience as well. Just this sort of, wow, I actually, well, we were talking about this earlier. You've been teaching online for a long time. I haven't been teaching online for quite as long as you have, but
pretty close.
Similar, but similar kind of idea. And and certainly in the last 2 or 3 years, I've been working with voice teachers from all over the world and using Zoom. And so, yes, this has just kind of kicked things. And that was more because, it was seen as sort of like the secondary, well, I can't drive to Canada, or I can't fly to Canada for a lesson, or to work with you. So, let's do Zoom. It's sort of seen as the secondary, although I didn't feel like it was secondary, because this is an amazing way to reach people and to be able to work with people. But now, certainly there's zero question anymore in anyone's mind about whether or not. And in fact, I did so I'll tell a little story on one of the singers who is also a voice teacher who I work with, who she lives about an hour and 45 minutes away. So it's a solid chunk.
Mm.
And she comes and works with me on a weekly to bi-weekly level. And she every once in a while something would come up and she wouldn't, it would be challenging to get to a session. And so I'd say, why don't we do this online? I mean, I work with lots of people online. Why don't we do this online? And she was vehemently against working online. No, never, never, never. I will always try. That's never going to be a thing. So of course, COVID. And then several sessions in, she said, so this is actually amazing because I don't have to spend 4 hours and I don't have to get up at, 6 in the morning to make sure that I'm getting to my session, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And so I could see, going forward, I could see maybe coming in person once every 6 weeks because I still like the in person, but the rest of the time doesn't have to be, right? So I think there's been a lot of that kind of revelation with voice teachers. Certainly lots of voice teachers do not enjoy the online process and want to be back in person as soon as possible. And certainly lots of singers prefer the in-person process. But certainly I think a lot of singers and voice teachers are thinking, well, this isn't all bad.
No, and certainly I think because, ones like yourself and myself, we already knew the value that we can provide to students online. And certainly as a contemporary singing teacher, and we have to acknowledge, you and I were talking about this prior to the show starting, for classical there is definitely some big differences, but for contemporary singing teaching, actually there is so many positivities to me providing a lesson to a student in their own practice space. Firstly, like you mentioned, there's no driving. Well, that's another thing. But secondly, often a lot of my students have their own mics. They're able to practice so I get to see them and work with them in the space that they're doing all their work in anyway. There's so many, there are just countless positivities to, to teaching. So that's certainly one area of teaching that has changed for many, not for you and I, we've been doing this a long time, but But another area that has recently been evolving, and it's funny, can I let this is a full disclaimer, everyone, even though Shannon and I agreed on the topic of what we're about to talk about and what the subject would be and all of that, we got a little carried away prior to the show start. We haven't talked about what we're about to talk about. So this is going to be really fascinating to see where you're sitting on the whole Formant pedagogy. Now you've got a course starting next weekend. Is it next weekend?
Weekend.
Called
Yeah.
Formant-Free Pedagogy. Now I'll just give it a little intro, not your workshop, but today's video is called Formant-Free Singing Pedagogy, and there's a reason for that. If we just called it Formant-Free Pedagogy, YouTube's algorithm wouldn't have known where to place it because the word pedagogy is really loosely translated or defined as the art of teaching. So we had to kind of put a nominator on there, we're talking about singing pedagogy. But your course is Formant-Free Pedagogy. Now, I'll let you talk about what Formant-Free Pedagogy is, and then we'll get into this. So talk us through it.
Yeah, so I think you rightly said that this might get a little sassy, and I very intentionally called the course Formant-Free Pedagogy. And the course is basically, it's a 2-day intensive, primarily for voice teachers. The first day is all about anatomy and physiology and what's happening in the voice and resonance and blah, blah, blah. And then the second day is about voice pedagogy. So how we can teach better, communication, language use, all that kind of stuff. And so I very intentionally called it Formant-Free Pedagogy because formants are kind of like the new research topic in voice pedagogy and in voice circles, right?
It's a
So we've
bit,
got
it's a
this
bit
kind of
buzz, isn't it? It's a bit buzz.
it's a bit buzz. Yes, it is a bit buzz. And just like all of the other things that have been the buzz, for example, SOVTs, semi-occluded vocal tract exercises or whatever the thing was before that.
Accent, breath.
All of the things, yes, accent, breath, all of the things that speech level singing,
Speech
I think
level
that was
singing.
probably a thing at some point too.
Estelle, methodology. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So all of the things that kind of come up into the research and get sort of, they can end up as these kind of clubs that we clobber our independent voice teachers with, right?
Oh,
So
you're being very kind. I sometimes I use another C word.
oh, yes.
Can be a
Yes.
little coltish, perhaps.
Yes, absolutely. And it ends up being this thing where, if you understand what blah, blah, blah is, and if you are using that in your studio, then you are clearly a good teacher. And so then the folks who are working hard in their studios and who are teaching full time, like for a living, and who don't, who can't take this summer off to friggin', read 1,000 textbooks and research papers and figure out what we're talking about and how to apply it in the studio, or who, can't take a course or whatever, start to feel they can often start to feel like, maybe I'm not doing right by my students. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe my students aren't as successful as they could be if I knew this information. So there gets this sort of, it's not good, it's not good. And I know you know this as well. I know we're kind of on the same page on that one. And so
we are.
My issue with this is obviously the intention of the folks who do the research and who, like when Titsa started to do the research about semi-occluded vocal tract exercises and straw exercises and started to show us exactly what was happening with those. I mean, his intention was certainly not to make voice teachers feel like they were doing something wrong or that they hadn't, that they were dumb or anything along those lines. Obviously not his intention. But it kind of happened that way sometimes. And when you say to a voice teacher, here's the thing, you've actually been using semi-occluded vocal tract exercises this whole time. If you've ever taught using a hum, if you've ever taught using an NG, if you've ever taught using a lip buzz or a lip trill or any of those things, you've been using semi-occluded vocal tract exercises this whole time.
For a long time.
And so now, exactly. And so now, yes, do we have a way to understand how this works better? And are you going to have some aha moments where you go like, oh, that's why it works. Cool. Great. And will you possibly be teaching better if you understand exactly why it works? Possibly. But it doesn't mean you're a bad teacher if you don't understand how it works? No. And so it's the same thing with formants, right? So if you are if you're a voice teacher who works with singers to help them develop a consistent sound through the range of their register, whatever that sound may be, if you're working in a contemporary style, if you're working in a classical style, if you're working in music theater, whatever that sound is, if you are helping singers to move through passaggio or breaks, if you're helping singers to have to have the control to create a consistent sound through their registers or through the range of their voice, you're already working with formants and doing so successfully. So will you, by understanding exactly what formants are and how we work with formants and understanding that, will it make you a better teacher? Perhaps. It might give you more tools. It might give you a way to kind of understand, oh, right, I need to change the vocal tract shape in a certain way in order to get this tonal outcome as we move through this pitch range. Sure, it might give you that. But You might already be doing that anyway. In fact, you probably are if you're already working with singers successfully to create a consistent tonal outcome through their
Yeah.
entire range. So that's the reason that I called this Formant-Free pedagogy, is because I just, first of all, I get a lot of questions from voice teachers like, what is this, and how do I, how do I do this, and can you please explain this to me in like 20 minutes, in the 20 minutes I have for continuing education between teaching all of the students in my full studio? Can you just explain it to me real quick?
Yeah.
And secondly, so I get a lot of questions that way. And secondly, I wanted to call it that because I wanted just to appeal to that voice teacher and just say, like, there isn't going to be anything in this intensive that you don't need. Like, you're already teaching well, and everything in this intensive is to get you teaching better without throwing stuff at you that you don't need. Will we be talking about formants? Yeah, we'll be talking about formants in the actual thing. Yes, we will be, because I talk about formants when I talk about resonance, and when I talk about registration, and when we talk about, you know, tonal outcomes and how we move through vowels and all that kind of stuff. Of course, I talk about them. Will we be talking about it in the, you must know the blah blah blah, and you must know, where to change blah blah blah? Not really. We'll be talking about it in the, hey, when you hear that sound going through this pitch range, what's your instinct to ask the singer to do? Yep, you're right. That's because you're wanting to line up F1 with the first harmonic, whatever the, yeah. So, yeah.
I think, and it's this is such an important discussion, and we've got in a few weeks' time. I forget the date, everyone, but we've got Professor Brian Gill coming back on the show. So good, and there is a gentleman, and I know that when he comes on the show, he will his manner is so open and so warm, and he is a really strong advocate for, formant pedagogy, and there is such a wealth of benefit to a singing teacher being able to understand this stuff. Yeah. I guess where the trouble brews, and we see it brewing online, don't we, in our singing teacher forums, and is where people start to use terminology to beat other people up, and it sort of becomes this exclusive club, and and people do have a tendency to rally around certain ideals. We see this across life. This is not just singing teachers. Do you wear a mask or don't you wear a mask during COVID? That's it's in a very sort of gross sort of illustration, but it comes back to I guess for the people watching our show who are not singing teachers per se, is that just because your singing teacher doesn't use F1 H1 language doesn't necessarily mean they don't know what they're doing with your voice. And I often say to singers, whether they be my student or someone else's, or they're just learning themselves, I always encourage students that your voice will tell you, is it working? If it isn't working, and I'll put my hand up and say, I am not God's gift to every singing teacher on the planet, or every singer on the planet. It would be incredibly arrogant of me to think that I can help every singer on the planet, that everything, that my approach, the way I go about doing things, because I'm human and I have my established ways of doing things, it would be arrogant of me to think that that's going to help every singer. I like to think that I can help more than I can't, don't we? Yeah? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But you as a singer, you want to really let the method or whatever you're engaging with, let your voice tell you. Your voice will tell you. You know, if you are experiencing pain, or the voice is locking up, or you're losing positivity in the way you're producing sound. I mean, these are all just sort of, you know, I'm grabbing these out of the air. Then that's the tell. It's not whether your teacher has a certain language built up around what they're doing. What are your thoughts about that, Shannon?
Yeah, 100% agree, Dan. That is, I think, I think, gosh, it is challenging, right? Because especially as when we're talking about young singers, when we're talking about young singers who don't necessarily have understand their own agency and are too young in many ways to understand what's happening with their voice. That can be very challenging, and especially if you if parents of young singers don't you know, parents can get drawn in as well by this, you know, well, this teacher has, you know, whatever, and says these things. I mean, it's very easy for parents to not be able to, of course, it's very challenging to know what's going on. But once, I absolutely agree, especially once you're into sort of teenage years and you're starting to get into the point where you start to understand your own agency and being able to understand what's happening in your own body and instrument, which for lots of people doesn't happen until much later than teenage years, let's be honest. But once we start to, that is absolutely true. We want to have this, be able to trust ourselves because it is our instrument, you know. And if a teacher is working for you and truly is actually working for you from the standards that you have for yourself, then wonderful, no matter what language they might be using. And vice versa is true as well. There is a book that I kind of call it's like the singer's voice ped book, I call it, by Brian Lee, D. Brian Lee. And what is the name of that book? Let me just see. I might actually have it here with me. I do.
Hey.
Sane Singing is what it's called, by D. Brian Lee. Brian is a wonderful voice teacher who teaches voice, he also has a career outside of the arts industry, and he went through school, if I remember correctly, his degree is in flute performance, and he you know, and he's also taken voice lessons and lots of other things like that. So he's one of those teachers and singers who comes to this industry, if I may, from a really unique perspective. And so the book, if you're an adult singer especially, this book is something that you may want to pick up, simply because he talks about ways for you as a singer to know if you're in the right place with the training that you're getting, how to find the right teacher for you, building a support team, measuring your own vocal progress, you know, navigating issues and confusions among methods and studios, taking care of yourself as a human being who sings. So that's just off the dust jacket.
I'm writing that down, Sane Singing, because that's one that I don't have on my shelf. And
well,
so
it's not your traditional voice ped book, right? It's really not. It's the one that in my undergraduate voice ped course, you know, we have, obviously, that I teach, I you know, have a very traditional style voice ped book, that anatomy, physiology, blah blah blah, all this stuff, and I recommend, this isn't a required text, but it's a highly recommended text for those beginning voice teachers to have, but also because in the undergraduate voice ped courses that I teach, they're all singers who are usually in their early 20s, right? So
Yeah.
they're extensively trained by this point, and they're generally classical singers, sometimes jazz singers, and so this is a really good time for them to get a book like this, where there's like I said, just this lovely discussion around how to do that self-evaluation, how to have those conversations around whether this is working for me or not, whether I am progressing in the way that I want to or not. And yeah, so anyway,
I
that's
think one of the things that I would add onto what we're saying is that it's not your responsibility as the singer, as the learner, to mold yourself to the teacher. It is the responsibility of the teacher to join you on your pathway of learning. And that is such an important orientation, because if that orientation is not right, if there is a balance in which you feel that you, the student, feel like, you know, you're not getting it right in accordance with, you know, and the teacher's getting, if there's a situation in which the teacher is getting frustrated with you or what have you, that you're not getting it right, it's not your responsibility wholly and solely to try and mold yourself to the teacher. It's the responsibility of the teacher to go, right, so how I've just said that, or what I've just said to you, somehow there's a disconnect, and I want to, as the teacher, meet you with where you're at, and communicate clearly with, you know, in a way that you're going to understand. And it is often the more experienced teachers that will, you know, have learnt, you know, more ways in which to do that. But you know, in the world of the online singing teacher, and like the YouTube and all of that, I think we really, you know, I often say to students, it's just singing. Like we're not creating a vaccine for COVID. We're you know, and it's in Western society that we've sort of deified singers, and in deifying singers, we have placed this, you know. Now, don't get me wrong, singing is important. Like it's important. So if you're a person who needs to express yourself vocally in a sung way, I'm not trivializing that that's important. It is. Hey, hands up, right? But at the end of the day, it is only singing. We're not operating on someone's brain. We're not taking, you know, we're not pointing a rocket at the moon and hoping to hit it. We're just singing. And that then should reflect onto the singing teacher. You're just a singing teacher. You're not a neuroscientist. Like it's, and that, if I might be so bold, you know, that sort of self-awareness by the singing teacher should find its way into the studio, and that should therefore be a situation in which you're able to, the teacher is approachable, and that approachability is going to come out in the language that they use, that it's inclusive language and not exclusive, that the language they're using is not designed to disempower the people that they were communicating with, but that it is designed to bring people into, you know, the thought bubble that they're having in that one moment. And yeah, I think it's just such a funny thing, isn't it, Shannon, that we find ourselves in this situation where singing, I don't know, I just feel like our industry has started to think more highly of itself than it ought.
Yeah. I mean, there is something that came up in my memories today on social media was a video that I did, a Facebook Live that I did last year at this time. And there's something in our classical voice teachers especially, I think, and especially of a certain vintage, and especially if they themselves were trained in a sort of European master kind of way,
Yeah.
where we talk about having to sort of break down the voice in order to build it up again, um, and the teacher becomes this like, and I was the Facebook Live that I did was like, don't do that, stop it. And if you're in a studio where someone is saying that to you, get out, because that is just, it's utter bull. But anyway, but I think that is that attitude. I'm not sure that it's new, to be honest. I'm
Yeah.
not sure that that's a new thing in
Yeah.
the industry. And I think we were talking about this a little bit earlier as well. I think one of the things that teaching online really, the opportunity to learn as we're teaching online as voice teachers, is to learn how to instill agency in students and
Yes.
how to really do these student-led sessions, especially when we're outside of academia. I mean, academia is a whole challenge unto itself
It
because
is.
of the rigors of what you have to
Align.
perform
Yeah.
at a certain time, and the parameters around the way the performance can be and all
Yes.
those things. So there's certainly, academia is a little bit of a different kettle of fish there in that way, but that is the great privilege of being an independent teacher and having an independent studio, is that we can teach in this very student-led way, and in this very in this non like guru
Yeah.
accolade way. We really can have that
Yeah.
culture in our studios,
Yeah.
and that's all the better for singers, and not just for singers but for people. I mean, just for people to find their voice, and I mean that with the capital V as well as with our, in the traditional sort of singing voice way, um, and for people to develop again their own agency and their own understanding of who they are, and that's a beautiful thing. And
It is.
again, like we were saying, something that we really can foster online in a way where you almost have to do it when you're teaching online.
Yeah.
You almost don't have a choice.
Yeah. 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 And I think, I would want to say to anyone who's watching today's video, that if you have found yourself in a scenario where a singing teacher, a choir director has intentionally or otherwise, because sometimes these things can happen in an unintentional way. The person wasn't thinking straight at the time, they weren't having a good day, it can, and there's my phone, I'm going to hang that up. And you have come away from an interaction where you've gone, it's me, it's all on me, the singer, that I can't do it, therefore I don't live up to the standards, and I'll never be that. Can I say to you, that is not true. I would want to do everything I could to remove that barb of poison from you, to say, no, in that particular instance, it was them. And for good or for ill, I would encourage you to seek a second, third, fourth opinion. Find a teacher that can come alongside you, can align themselves with you to help you realize your potential. This is one of the challenges of the global environment that we find ourselves in, is that suddenly everyone's, I think, feels a pressure to perform, whether it be us as teachers or us as singers, to perform on an international level. And that is actually one of the dangers of the current space that we find ourselves in, and because we can't. We you know, if what you are destined to be and what you enjoy being is someone who is simply wanting to sing with greater ease for your children as they go to sleep, then that's all you need to be. And oh, wow, I mean, there's the beauty of singing right there. There is no greater goal possibly. So it's so important that you find someone that will come alongside you and will nurture that. I love your use of term, Shannon, that will give you agency to be all that you can be, because, you know, we can't all be, you know, Al Jarreau or Beyonce or, you know, but it's kind of, we've found ourselves in a funny way all expecting that we should have to be like it, and it's, and the same goes for singing teachers. I can't be a Brian Gill. I mean, that man's got sort of genius level written all over him. You know, we can't big brain. If you want to experience big brain, everyone, make sure you keep an eye out for the Brian Gill session. We can't all be Shannon Coateses. Big brain, beautiful hair. But we can realize the full potential of us, of me. And that's so important. I think we all have to be reminded of that, don't we?
Mm-hmm. I agree. We got a little preaching going on here, and I'm not adverse to that at all.
We did say at the beginning, didn't we? We did.
Yeah.
We did. We threw it out there. So if people have kept watching, it's at their own discretion.
That's right. It's on them. 100%.
Which goes against everything we just said.
Exactly. Exactly. It's totally your fault.
We do have to wrap it up. I mean, I just love having you on the show, Shannon, because it's like you're a sister from another mother. You know, we do sort of, so from the very first time that you and I met, which is I think here in Brisbane. Yes. Back in 2011, ICVT Brisbane. Anyway, long time ago. You know, I have just always loved your company, loved your thoughts and your insights to things, and I'm very much hoping it won't be the last time we have you on the show, because you're just fantastic. Do you have anything you want to finish up now that it's midnight in Canada?
Oh gosh, yeah, look at that. Or we're getting close to midnight anyway. I don't think so. The information for Formant-Free Pedagogy is on my website, shannon-coates.com.
And it's in the description, everyone.
Great. So, yep, feel free to check that out if you're interested. The early bird rates are on until tomorrow, so the 7th at midnight Eastern time, my time.
Right.
So there's another 24 hours.
You've got another 24 hours. Everyone, if you really want to sort of deep dive into Formant-Free Pedagogy, that'll have a little bit of formant involved, yes, just a little bit, then you definitely want to jump in. And the thing I love about all of your stuff, Shannon, is it's accessible. You don't coat everything in a highfalutin marzipan. You know, it's
coincidentally, that's the thing I love about your stuff. So
there we go. See, once again we are at the, what do they call it? The Mutual Appreciation Club or something. Club. I don't know. Maybe we've inadvertently created our own cult. I don't know. Okay. We do. And on that,
On that note,
oh, there oh, she's gone. She's gone. Oh, what a day! What a session! I was really looking forward to today. It was the grin I needed. It was, and I hope you've enjoyed today as well. How could you not? And do you know what? The singing thing should bring you joy. There should be joy. It shouldn't be, feel like you are not just physically, but sometimes I think the learning to sing thing can get us all wrapped up emotionally, and our psyche can be. It doesn't need to be that way. It doesn't. It shouldn't be that way. When you were walking around, running around the outdoors as a kid, singing, you weren't thinking about what you were doing. You were just singing, and that's. Now, as adults, we're all trying to get back to that point with the knowledge and everything like that. But that's what we should be all pursuing, the joy of singing. So this week, don't throw the terminology out, but put it on the shelf for a week. Enjoy your singing, and then at the end of the week, after you've booked in the next 24 hours for the Pedagogy free Formant-Free Pedagogy course. Then you can pick up all the terminology again, and Shannon will teach you all how to do it and hold the positive tension of both. What a great session. I have seriously loved it. I hope you have too. Give today a thumbs up if you have. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the white bell icon. You know all the things to do. We'll see you next week when we'll do a Q&A. We'll answer your questions directly. Thank you so much for joining in, and we'll see you soon. I'm Dr. Dan. Sing well.